I did tell you that we were going to test a nested if. See if we can nest an if statement. And I'm going to tack it on to the end of the program that we just wrote in the last video, because I need things like, well, here's an example. I need to know how fast Speedy's wings are beating. So I'm going to run this program. I've got a bunch of questions that I have to ask, but it is giving me an error message. And I even put a comment on the end of this saying that it would give me an error message. Now, Code Sculptor is not as good as GDB Online on telling me what the error messages is. This just says bad input. So let me tell you what the problem here is. This entire program has been using single quotes as a way to surround strings. And so inside my input statement, I have single quotes to surround the input string. But if you'll notice, there is a single quote, an apostrophe S for Speedy's wings. And that apostrophe looks to the opening single quote mark as the closing, which means all of the rest of this up until the second one is kind of just hanging out there with no closing. So I have a couple of options on how to get around this. The first option is to change these two outside single quotes to double quotes. If I were to change them both to double quotes, then I can have a single quote inside of them, and it doesn't mind at all. So we will just put some numbers in here, and this is asking about my heartbeat, and this is now Speedy's wings. You can see in the prompt that there is an apostrophe S, and so by surrounding the entire string by double quotes, I am now able to have the code run. Another way, if I wanted to keep my single quotes for some reason or another way to get around this is to tell the system that that is actually supposed to be a tick mark and not a single quote. And so just like in the other programs, we were forcing new lines with a \n. If I were to put a backslash in front of that apostrophe or the tick mark, it's going to tell the system that that's actually supposed to be a tick mark and it's not a single quote. So let's see if we can get this print statement. How fast does my heart beat and how fast do Speedy's wings beat? We'll just put some numbers in there. So you have two options for correcting the error if you're surrounding all of your strings with single quote. So now that we fixed the error, and now that I know how fast your heart is beating and how fast your bird is flying, I'm going to build an if statement based upon those two things. So line 59, if the bird is traveling at 150 or more, it should say more than 150, and your heart is beating more than 199 beats per minute, you're going to print you'll never catch him. And then you need to put out some sugar because a hummingbird eats half their body weight in sugar per day. And what I want you to notice about this, I'm using the F to format the string. I'm using the curly braces, but if you'll notice, this one is not a variable. That's actually a calculation inside of those curly braces. So what goes inside of there does not have to be variables. Here's an example of a calculation. I put an error on this line. Stop the video and see if you can tell me why this is going to error out. So if you said it's because there is another apostrophe inside of there, then you're absolutely right. So I can either change the outer single quotes to double quotes, or I can just put the escape character, the backslash, in front of that tick mark, and then it will treat it as an apostrophe instead of the closing single brace. So let's test this and see if it will work. Speedy, my name, I'll just put 1. How many nests? So I'm just going to put some numbers in here. This is how fast does my heart beat. So that is a part of the question on line 59. The condition says my heart rate has to be higher than 199. So I'm going to make it 200. And then the next question is asking me how fast do my bird's wings beat. On line 59, the speed is going to have to be better than 150. So if I put 160, both of the conditions are now true for the if, which means that it should drop into the if bucket and print. Oh, now I have an error message. Let's see if we can figure out what the error message is. The nice thing is that it's actually trying to tell me, and this one is not nearly as cryptic as the error messages have been in the past. This is telling me that weight is not defined, which means that we're going to have to create another variable, and we're going to have to ask how much your bird weighs. So I'm going to add a prompt right below line 57 asking how much the bird weighs. So let's see if this will fix my error. I added on line 58 a prompt to see how much Speedy weighs. So when I run it now, this is my heart rate. It has to be better than 199. My bird has to be, oh, and this is his wings, how fast his wings are beating. Line 60 says it has to be better than 150. So I'll say 165. And now it's going to prompt me for how much the bird weighs, because he's going to eat half his body weight in sugar per day. So if he weighs 3 grams, half of his body weight would be 1.5 grams. So let's see what we get. You'll never catch him. He needs 1.5 grams of sugar per day. So sometimes the error messages are not nearly as cryptic. All right, I'm going to add an elif to this, and I'm going to say if your bird's name is Speedy or the bird's name is Gonzalez, I'm going to ask you to change the bird's name. Now, we have seen that I can do things besides just printing inside of an if or an elif statement. Here's an example of me. I'm going to prompt the user for a more original name. Now, you'll notice this input statement is using the plus symbol. When we have, we can use the string format to put name inside of the curly braces. Needs a different name. Enter something more original. And so if you like using the string format, I think it reads a whole lot better than using the plus sign or the comma separators between all of our print statements. So now that we have updated that, I am going to see if I can put something else inside of an if structure, or in this case an elif, besides just a prompt. Do you think that I could put an if structure inside of my elif? Well, here's an example. It looks like we're going to be tabbed in wrong. Oh, nope, that's right. We need to get the correct tab. So I am now inside an elif. I need to tab in correctly. And this says, if name is equal to Speedy or Gonzalez, print seriously. So the elif says, if the bird's name is Speedy or Gonzalez, ask him for another name. When I prompt for the other name, if they enter in the new name as either Speedy or Gonzalez, I'm going to print something highly intelligent like, really? And if I can have an if, it would seem to me I can have an else. These do need to be tabbed in correctly. Make sure they're tabbed in, and I'm going to press all of this up just a little bit. All right, so I have my if, I have my elif. Inside of an elif, I have an if else inside of there. And this is the idea that we can nest if structures inside of other if structures. So by crackies, let's see if we can get this one to run. So for this one, if I want to run it, I have to bypass the if statement. So I need the if statement to be false so that I can get the elif statement to be true. So let's make Let's see. Oh, can somebody tell me this is an excellent error message? Well, very cryptic error message, but this is an excellent error. I'm going to have you stop the video and see if you can tell me what is wrong with this print statement. And as a hint, it's also wrong with the print statement on line 71. So see if you can tell what's wrong with it. And if you guessed, it's because this is not tabbed in, which means this is also not tabbed in. That is a pretty cryptic error message, although at least it was showing you where it was occurring. So now let's run it again. Here we go. So the bird's name needs to be capital Speedy in order to make one of the conditions on line 64 true. So my name, this one doesn't matter, the nests or the feeders. What does matter is that I need the if statement on line 60 to be false. So my heart rate, if my heart rate is false, like 10, that means the entire and statement will be false. And then it doesn't matter how fast Speedy's wings beat or what Speedy's weight is, because now we should be in the LF on line 64. He needs a different name, enter something more original. I have a nested if-else inside of there that says if I key in Gonzalez, and we're going to do it case, Gonzalez, spell it right, correct case, it should drop into the if on line 67 and print. Seriously? If I had actually changed my bird's name to something else, like, what is the bird that goes beep, beep, beep? That is, okay, I don't know. The one Wile E. Coyote's always trying to catch. Is that Speedy? That might actually be Speedy Gonzalez. Anyway, if I had put in any other name on my second attempt to rename my bird, it would have dropped into the default else